The dream began with a white 2012 Ford Transit van and a promise of open roads. Gabby Petito was 22, an artist and traveler from Blue Point, New York. Brian Laundrie was 23, quiet, artistic, sometimes withdrawn. They met in high school, reconnected later, and in 2019 began a relationship that their friends described as intense, full of small adventures and long talks about freedom. By July 2021, they had turned a van into a tiny home, launched a YouTube channel called Nomadic Static, and set out across America. Their plan was to document van life, the minimalist movement that trades stability for sunsets and new coordinates. To strangers online, it looked perfect. But the images that made it to Instagram were only half the story. They left New York on July 2, 2021. Early posts showed mountain roads in Colorado, red sand in Utah, and smiles framed by golden light. Gabby called her mother, Nicole Schmidt, almost daily. Her family says she sounded cheerful and grounded. Yet even before the trip, friends had noticed tension. Brian could be jealous, controlling, and alternately affectionate and distant. Rose Davis, one of Gabby's close friends, later said he isolated her, sometimes taking her ID to keep her from going out. In the van, every argument had nowhere to go. The walls were too close. By mid-August, that strain became visible to outsiders. On August 12, 2021, Moab City police officers Daniel Pratt and Eric Robbins responded to a 911 call reporting a gentleman slapping a girl near the Moonflower Cooperative grocery store. The witness, Christopher, followed their van and saw it swerve before police initiated the stop. The body cam video that followed would later become one of the most studied clips in modern true crime. It shows Gabby sobbing beside the road, her face flushed, explaining that she'd hit him first after an argument about cleanliness. Brian stayed calm, cooperative, even charming, with a half smile that never faltered. Officer Pratt's report noted that Gabby appeared confused and emotional, but believed she was the aggressor. The officers separated them for the night. He went to a hotel. She stayed with the van. The report categorized the incident as a mental health crisis, not domestic violence. Experts later said that misstep, misreading fear as hysteria, might have been her only documented chance for intervention. After the Moab stop, they continued. They visited Arches National Park, Bryce Canyon, and eventually Salt Lake City. On August 17th, Brian unexpectedly flew from Salt Lake City back to Florida for several days, allegedly to empty a storage unit and save money on rent. That trip puzzled investigators later. Some suspected it was an effort to move or hide evidence. He rejoined Gabby on August 23rd, and by then, friends noticed a shift in her tone. Text shorter, more formal, almost mechanical. On August 24th, Gabby FaceTimed her mother from the Fairfield Inn in Salt Lake City. She looked tired but peaceful and said their next stop was Grand Teton National Park. It was the last time anyone saw her alive on video. 2 days later, on August 27th, multiple strange events converged. Around 1 p.m., a couple dining at Mary Piglet's restaurant in Jackson Hole saw Brian arguing loudly with staff. Witness Nina Angelo later described Gabby as crying and apologizing for him, as he stormed out and back in repeatedly. That same night, witnesses at the Spread Creek dispersed camping area heard shouting echoing through the trees. A white van was seen parked nearby. Somewhere between the restaurant and that silence, Gabby Petito vanished. Over the next few days, Brian Laundrie moved as though nothing had happened. On August 29th, Miranda Baker, a Wyoming traveler, posted on TikTok that she and her boyfriend had picked up Brian hitchhiking near Coulter Bay Village. He told them his fiancée was working on social media posts at their van and that he was camping alone. He offered them $200 for a short ride, an odd amount of urgency. When they mentioned heading toward Jackson, he became agitated and demanded to be dropped off immediately. Another witness, Norma Jean Jalovec, said she also gave him a ride that evening. He remained calm, polite, and spoke casually about hiking alone for days. None of them knew they were driving the prime suspect in a murder investigation. By August 30th, Gabby's phone sent a text to her mother, "No service in Yosemite." The location made no sense. She wasn't anywhere near California. It was the last message from her device. Her family began to panic. On September 1st, Brian returned alone to his parents' home at 4343 Wabasso Avenue in Northport, Florida, driving Gabby's white van. Security footage from neighbors' doorbell cameras confirmed the van's arrival that evening. Inside the house, his parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, stayed silent. Brian offered no explanation to anyone, not even Gabby's family, who were calling repeatedly in panic. The next day, he contacted attorney Stephen Bertolino. Within days, the Petito family issued a public plea for help, begging the Laundries to cooperate, but none of their calls or messages were ever returned. On September 11th, Gabby was officially reported missing to Suffolk County Police, launching a multi-state investigation that gripped the nation. The disappearance exploded online. True crime enthusiasts, social media users, and content creators turned the case into a digital search operation. Hashtags #FindGabbyPetito and #GabbyPetito reached millions of views. People analyzed satellite maps, matched locations from her Instagram posts, and combed through van life vlogs. The most important breakthrough came from Jen and Kyle Bethune, a Florida family traveling in Wyoming. Reviewing footage from their YouTube channel, Red, White, and Bethune, they noticed a white van parked on a dirt road near Spread Creek on August 27th. His Florida plates matched Gabby's. When they turned the footage over to the FBI, it became the key to locating her. On September 19th, 2021, Teton County Search and Rescue discovered human remains at Spread Creek Dispersed Camping Area, roughly 45 miles from Jackson. The FBI's Denver field office confirmed the identity through dental records the following day. Dr. Brent Blue, the Teton County coroner, ruled the cause of death as manual strangulation and the manner as homicide. The time of death was estimated at 3 to 4 weeks earlier, consistent with the final sightings. By then, Brian Laundrie was gone. His parents told police he had gone for a hike in the Carlton Reserve, a sprawling 24,000-acre wetlands preserve near their home, on September 13th. He never returned. The search for him became one of the largest in Florida history. Drones, dogs, all-terrain vehicles, and divers combed through alligator-infested marshland. The public suspected his parents of hiding him. Protesters gathered outside their house, shouting, "Where's Gabby?" and "Tell the truth." For weeks, the search yielded nothing but wet clothes and dead ends. On October 20th, 2021, after water levels in the reserve receded, investigators discovered a dry bag, a backpack, and skeletal remains in the Creek Environmental Park, an area connected to the Carlton Reserve. The Sarasota County Medical Examiner and the FBI later confirmed the remains as Brian Laundrie through dental records and DNA. Near the body lay a revolver and a spiral notebook, water-damaged but legible in parts. Inside were written admissions that he had killed Gabby, claiming she was injured and suffering and that he acted out of mercy. The Brian Laundrie notebook confession was released publicly in June 2022. Investigators and psychologists called it an attempt to control the narrative one final time, an effort to frame the murder as compassion rather than violence. The FBI's Denver division closed the case officially on January 21, 2022. Their summary stated that the investigation did not identify any individuals other than Brian Laundrie directly involved in the tragic death of Gabrielle Petito. They confirmed he used Gabby's debit card after her death, withdrawing over $1,000. The case was closed with the formal conclusion: homicide resulting from domestic violence. In the aftermath, the legal and public reckoning began. The Petito and Schmidt-Gabby's families filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Laundries in Sarasota County, alleging emotional distress and claiming that the Laundries knew their son had killed Gabby but chose silence while pretending she was still missing. Another lawsuit targeted the Moab Police Department, arguing that Officers Pratt and Robbins failed to enforce Utah's mandatory domestic violence law and misidentified the victim as the aggressor. In November 2022, the city of Moab denied wrongdoing, but later reached a $100,000 settlement with the Petito family to fund domestic violence training for local officers. Meanwhile, the internet's obsession blurred lines between investigation and entertainment. Reddit and TikTok users dissected every frame of bodycam footage, theorizing alternate timelines and hidden conspiracies. Some helped. Users crowdsourced map data that verified the Spread Creek clue. Others spread misinformation, falsely accusing bystanders and inserting fabricated texts into the case file. What began as empathy evolved into digital theater. Still, the story would not end quietly. Journalists and advocates began discussing racial and gender bias in missing persons coverage. Joy Reid on MSNBC invoked the phrase missing white woman syndrome, coined by journalist Gwen Ifill, to describe the imbalance between media attention given to white victims like Gabby and the relative neglect of Indigenous, Black, and Latina women. In the same region where Gabby was found, dozens of Indigenous women remain missing. The conversation became part of the case's cultural legacy, even as her parents tried to redirect focus towards systemic prevention rather than debate. They established the Gabby Petito Foundation in late 2021, headquartered in New York and Wyoming, supporting domestic violence shelters, awareness campaigns, and training for law enforcement on coercive control, behavioral patterns where abusers dominate partners through manipulation rather than overt violence. They worked with the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the National Network to End Domestic Violence to amplify resources. The foundation's mission was simple: to use the reach of Gabby's story to save others quietly slipping from view. But the emotional core of the Gabby Petito case remains in the sequence that played out between August 12th and August 27th, 2021. A span of 15 days that transformed a shared adventure into tragedy. The timeline shows escalation. Verbal control to isolation, humiliation to disappearance, and finally, murder masked by fabricated care. In hindsight, everything fits too neatly. The Moab stop where she minimized her fear. The restaurant argument that revealed his volatility. The eerie no service in Yosemite. Text that read like someone trying to borrow her voice. Each event was documented, time-stamped, and replayed by millions. Together they form an anatomy of forewarning, signs visible only after the outcome. Forensic data later traced movement of the van after Gabby's death. Cell tower records placed it leaving Spread Creek and driving south toward Jackson, then east, then back to Florida. The National Park Service, Wyoming authorities, and the FBI confirmed the vehicle's route through toll cameras. Every mile traveled alone in that van expanded the silence he carried. Every day that passed before her discovery turned speculation into collective grief. At home in Florida, Brian's parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, told police they last saw their son on September 13th, heading into the reserve with a backpack. They retrieved his Mustang from the nearby parking lot on September 15th. The following day, police named Brian a person of interest. On September 17th, after nearly 4 days of delayed reporting, the Laundries claimed he was missing. The timing created widespread suspicion. Former FBI agents publicly questioned the parents' account, noting inconsistencies in dates and actions. Later court filings suggested they may have known more than they admitted. Still, the case ended without charges, the only confession left in the swamp. The aftermath stretched through 2022. Court filings, settlements, and media retrospectives turned tragedy into documentation. Documentaries from CNN, Peacock, and Dateline NBC traced the story's descent. Viewers watched again the same footage of Gabby laughing by the van, unaware that those frames would soon become evidence. The Gabby Petito case is not cautionary for its mystery, but for its ordinariness. It shows how quickly control can hide behind care, how a police stop can miss what a single night of training might reveal, how digital empathy can illuminate and exploit in the same breath. It is not a story about van life or social media, though those are its mirrors. It is a story about a young woman who wanted to see the world, and the man who decided she would not. What remains are the immutable details. Gabby Petito, born March 19, 1999, died by strangulation near Spread Creek, Wyoming, late August 2021. Brian Laundrie, born November 18, 1997, died by suicide in Myakkahatchee Creek Park on or around October 20, 2021. The FBI closed the file in January 2022. No further suspects, no new evidence. Just an unfinished dream documented in images that outlast the people in them. The last confirmed sight of her alive was in Jackson Hole, apologizing to strangers for the man who would kill her. The last confirmed movement of him alive was walking into a swamp carrying a notebook. Between those points lies everything anyone will ever know about what happened. The rest is silence. This is Crime Arcane, where every story leaves a scar.